Next is one of my favorites. I never thought I would have a favorite diet, but I think this is because if you don't have a gallbladder, dear God, please don't try diet. And I can't just tell you why you should do all this stuff. I can tell you that, but to a certain extent, most people need to live this stuff and realize that, oh, I eat better, I feel better. It's like, I didn't feel bad before. I told myself, like, I don't feel bad. I'm a college athlete. I'm doing well in school. I can focus. I can do all the things. And then after completing that, I felt so much better. It was completely life-changing for me. And that's where I got my start with nutrition. And it started with the whole thing. Hello, everyone. My name is Allie Virtue. I am a functional medicine nutritionist and the host of the Pre-Diet Podcast. The whole point of this podcast is to teach you what I feel like my clients can really benefit from knowing before they even reach out to work with a nutritionist. So I guess I'm trying to put myself out of work, but I am 26 episodes in. This is the 27th episode, and so far I'm having a great time doing it. So we're going to keep this going. So each week when I sit down to outline what I want to talk about on this podcast, I try to think about a recent message that I wish more people knew. And it is currently still January. So a big topic of conversation and on social media is, what diet should we try? Allie, what do you think of this diet? What do you think of this program, etc.? So I thought I would just talk about it on here because a lot of that stuff is going on, and you'd actually be surprised how many times while I'm working with someone, so someone is paying a nutritionist to help them out, they'll say, like, what do you think? I think I'm going to try a PCOS diet. I think I'm going to try the ketogenic diet. I think I'm going to try this diet. What do you think about this program? And I'm like, do you not want to do what we're doing? Do you need something that has a name on it? Because we can name it whatever you want. I mean, I eat and follow the Allie program because that works best for Allie. So and this is no shade on anyone. This comes up so often. And I think it's effectively the same as working with your personal trainer, right? And you're like, I think I might want to run a 5K. I think I might want to sign up for a half Ironman. I think I might want to do a powerlifting competition, something like that. So I don't take it personally. And I think it's people's just genuine curiosity about a dietary endeavor or just like a physical or athletic event. The difference, though, with the dietary side of things is there's usually not really big, sexy differences as far as when it comes to what really works. Because if you have high blood sugar, if you have high cholesterol, if you have PCOS, if you have hypothyroidism, if you have a lot of those chronic disease things, and I realize hypothyroidism isn't chronic disease, but if you have a myriad of health issues, the dietary stuff doesn't need to be as specific as you think. And that's one of the number one questions that people ask is, if I have hypothyroidism, what kind of diet do I need to be on? And sorry to burst your bubble, but there's no free passes for not eating vegetables or for not eating lean proteins, or some of those fundamental dietary things still apply. And so many people are so disappointed because they're like, but surely I need something special. Like, it can't just be, oh, I need to eat more balanced meals more consistently. Like, it's not sexy enough, Allie. I need something more specific. And of course, like when you're working with someone one-on-one and you know all of the details of their health history and their lifestyle, you can get way more specific with them. But there's no free pass past the basics. Like, we still need to move. We still need to exercise. We should still try to put muscle mass on our frame. There's some of those fundamentals that just still apply no matter what. So terribly sorry to disappoint you if you did not know that. But in today's episode, I would love to be an educational ray of sunshine for you. And what I mean by that, instead of telling you which diets are terrible, which ones you should be doing, I want to talk about them in a very non-emotional way, with zero prerogative. I have no other motives. I guess I have one motive, but you'll have to listen to the end to hear it. I have one motive to just tell you about these programs that are really popular, because I really want to make you pretty diet proof. I want you to know why these diets work. I want you to know the pros, the cons, who they might be really good for, and who might want to avoid these ones, that they probably just are not a good fit. And I'm going to try to do this in a way, because I realize a lot of people don't want another degree in nutrition. They just want to know what they need to know to live well, feel good, et cetera, et cetera. And I talk about this because I don't want people to feel shame or guilt when they try a program. I think it's often just not a good fit for them. For example, we know that the way a bodybuilder eats is probably pretty good for getting really lean, showing off muscle mass, building muscle mass, things like that. But most bodybuilders eat probably 5 to 6 meals a day. That requires a lot of preparation. And if you're working 13-hour night shifts or swing shifts, you probably don't have time to stop and eat 5 to 6 times a day. That's just not a really good fit. So instead of thinking that you're failing, I would really like to just reiterate You're probably just going to learn something. If you tried a dietary protocol and it didn't really work for you, probably learn something about yourself or about food or about how that food made you feel. But I don't think you need to beat yourself up thinking that it was your fault or you were the failure in it. It was probably just not a good match. So here are some of the diets that came to mind when I was thinking of popular ones that we might want to cover. Number one was the ketogenic diet. Paleo was on there, juicing, intermittent fasting, 75 hard as a program, plant-based diets, Whole30 or elimination diets. Have a good story about that one. A sugar-free diet or the carnivore diet. That's a long list. I know I'm going to try to keep it very minimal to the point so you leave feeling educated, empowered, and not overwhelmed. Again, helping you to become truly diet proof because a lot of these programs have very similar backbones. They have similar characteristics that I think really lead to a lot of the success, quote, success that people see when they do try these diets. So if we just do those things that generally make us more successful, generally make us healthier humans, if we know those things, we can just do those things. We don't need to do XYZ program to the letter. We just need to do those common things that generally work for a lot of people. And then again, this gets you closer to creating, the program for you. Like I said, I followed the Allie diet because Allie really likes that diet. Allie really likes that lifestyle, that protocol, and it's easy for her to maintain. And I say that because I'm still learning. I'm still learning about myself, how my body reacts to foods. I'm sure that will change as I get older. I've heard that from many people over time because this stuff is a journey. It's not a destination. Even this really hit me actually this morning. I'm traveling. If you are watching this, I'm in a hotel room right now. And I was working out this morning listening to a audiobook called Wisdom Takes Work by Ryan Holiday. And this quote just slapped me across the face. I immediately texted it to myself so I wouldn't forget. And I'm so glad I did because I'm telling you about it now. But the quote is, "Moderation is impossible without the wisdom to choose which is worth having." You know the old saying of everything in moderation? Well, that never really sunk in for me. I just never really agreed with it, but I recognize that that's probably the closest thing to describing kind of how I live my life now as far as diet, nutrition, things like that. But it never really worked or encompassed, like I was missing the words to really describe it. And this was really, really helpful because I was like, poison in moderation is still poison. And I'm not saying like certain foods are poison. I'm not saying that, but peanuts in moderation is still a peanut to someone who's allergic to peanuts. Like that's still not good. So moderation doesn't really apply to that. And so just missing the language to really describe my problem, I guess, with that type of saying. So when this came along, I felt like this is perfect. This is what I want to teach people. Call it dietary wisdom, or I want them to help them acquire that wisdom because wisdom requires you doing something, right? It's from lived experiences, and I can't just tell you why you should do all this stuff. I can tell you that, but to a certain extent, most people need to live this stuff and realize that, oh, I eat better, I feel better. I liked that experience. I'm going to do more of that experience. I want more of that versus like, yeah, Allie just keeps telling me to eat vegetables and I don't really want to. I think I'm not saying that's a lack of wisdom, but that's what I want to help people find. It's not just the simple rote memorization of a meal plan. I want to kind of instill some of that wisdom and knowledge, but also how that applies because that experience is really powerful as well. So if you know more about your body, how the food you eat affects your body and how your body feels as a result, that takes the knowledge of nutrition and the experience of your own life. And that is how we as in me as your coach and you, create a lifestyle and a nutrition quote plan and make those decisions that lead you to the best choices. Because I can tell you what to do, but I don't know the value of some of those nutrition and lifestyle choices. I can say, yeah, eating a bunch of Snickers bars every single day, probably not good. But also if that's like your favorite food and the favorite treat you're looking forward to on your birthday, that doesn't make sense to me either. That doesn't add up. So another example would be, is soda really the problem? If someone is having one soda very occasionally, once a week, a couple times a month, is that really the problem? Is that really worth mentioning when I'm like, hey, you should really stop having that because that food is bad? One, I don't think that's a big enough reason to change that habit. It's not very impactful. I don't think that's going to do much. And I don't think that's really worth mentioning if it's so infrequent and really not a problem. If anything, I think that takes away from the relationship that I'm building with a client because why am I being so nitpicky when I don't, when that person doesn't have it that often, there's probably other things that they're doing on a daily basis or multiple times a day that can move them closer to their goal than me being nitpicky of like, you having that soda, it's not really great. Versus if someone is having 3 cans, so 12 ounces of soda, regular soda, not sugar-free or diet stuff, a day, that's 410 calories. Every single day for a week, that's 2,870 calories of soda per week. So that's over probably a day's worth of calories just from soda every single day. So this was a client in the past, and for her, it seemed pretty daunting to cut that out. And when we got to the root cause of it, she was tired later in the day. She needed some caffeine. Water's boring after a while, and she needed something else to drink. So if that was the root cause, we just found her another caffeine source that worked for her and some other drinks to drink besides soda that weren't as calorie dense. Problem solved. She hasn't had soda in a really long time, and it's no longer an issue. And her, health, she feels better. All of those things have improved without me being like, hey, that's really bad food. I just kind of outlined like, this is how, like, if we're looking at the budget, this is a pretty big part of the budget. And I think we could probably optimize this, but you tell me how valuable this is to you. She's like, well, it's not, but this is why I have it. Cool. See how that's such a better approach to look at things? And granted, I think that's really hard to do for yourself. And that's why it's really helpful to have an accountability buddy or someone to kind of look things over with and just kind of ask questions about like, hey, tell me about this part of the budget. Tell me this part of your lifestyle. How much value does it give you in relation to what you want to pursue as far as your goals? All right, I'll try to stop with all the philosophy and the stoicism, but I do think that this is quickly becoming my niche or favorite thing to read about is how these principles apply to getting people to achieve their health goals and feel better, because that is my main mission. So let's dig into the diets, how they work, how they don't work, the pros and cons. All right, jackets off. I'm ready. Let's do this. Let's dig into the first diet. First one on my list is the ketogenic diet. So how this works, essentially, it's a very high fat diet, very low carb diet, and pretty moderate in protein in general. I think the pros of this is that it eliminates a lot of processed food, a lot of quote like inflammatory foods or junk foods, things like that. It can also be really good for appetite suppression. So if someone is just constantly hungry, you usually feel pretty full with this. It's high fat. Fat sits in our stomach for a little bit longer compared to just carbs alone. And so that's going to make us feel pretty filling. The cons, I would say, that immediately come to mind, not a lot of people are going to be able to sustain this. It does eliminate a lot of very common foods, especially in like modern American culture. So if you're never going to have traditional desserts again, this is going to be very much like on the wagon, off the wagon. And I don't think that's a very good approach either. So we need to find some middle ground. I think this can be beneficial as quote like a reset. I think this is a beneficial experience for people to not necessarily having to get into ketosis, but having a lower carb approach. I think it could be good as like a kind of an elimination diet, but I think there are better options as far as elimination diets, and we'll talk about those. Another big major con is it doesn't necessarily teach portion control or like calories or macros, and macros are protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Those are the 3 things that give us energy. And so I don't love this for long term, that's for sure. It's really not good if you don't have a gallbladder. Your gallbladder is something that helps us digest fat along the digestive system. And if you don't have one of those, you're probably going to have a high fat meal and then you run in for the toilet. So not good for those people. So if you don't have a gallbladder, dear God, please don't try a ketogenic diet, maybe a low carb one, but you probably want to watch the fats. So that means you probably want to track your food in an app or something so you can check in with amounts there. A lot of people also suffer with weight gain after this, again, because there's no portion control. And then when you add a bunch of carbohydrates in, your appetite can go up. So portion control can be tough. Weight gain, a lot of the weight loss that people initially see is water weight. So carbohydrates, literally in the name of it, carbs hold on to water. So if you eliminate carbs, you're not going to hold as much water literally on your frame. So that right there, that's what the initial weight loss that people typically see. And they'll feel a little bit leaner because our muscles aren't as pumped. Some of that pump is carbohydrates and water and being stored in the muscle. So I don't, that's kind of discouraging for people when they see that initial weight loss and then they bring carbs back in and they see carb regain. So I don't love that. I also don't think this approach is very good for athletes, especially if you are a sprint athlete. So sprinters, anyone who has a very short but powerful kind of explosion of power for their sport, like Olympic lifters or rowers or things like that. I don't think that's a great approach. Also, probably harder for the muscle building side of things. So protein for this particular diet is pretty moderate. It's not high. And if you're an athlete, you really need to keep your protein up so you can recover very effectively and or build muscle depending on what season of sports you're in to be really good at your sport. So if you're not getting enough protein, you're training really hard, recovery is going to be tough, things like that. Carbohydrates also help refuel the muscles. So just not the best approach when it comes to athletic populations. Also wouldn't recommend this for growing teens either. One, because it limits food groups. I would be nervous of eliminating food groups for certain ages. Sometimes it's also hard to get fiber with this type of dietary protocol. Not always, but some people struggle with that. Some people will also lean on keto products instead of just doing a whole foods approach to this particular diet. I will say it can be very good for people who have higher blood sugar. It can be a good reset. It can be a good option for people who are tired of feeling hungry. So it can be good for those individuals, but I do think it takes a lot of guidance to move from a ketogenic diet into a just generally low carb diet without kind of falling off the wagon, so to speak, and regaining the weight they may have lost. All right, the paleo diets. So this is based off of, quote, what our ancestors might have eaten during the Paleolithic times. And I'll be honest, I started my nutrition journey with the paleo-based diet. Started with the Whole30, then discovering paleo, and had a fabulous time with it. But I will say it didn't teach me anything about portion control, and I did not have the body composition that I really wanted during this phase of things. I was doing CrossFit, doing paleo, which are very much married at the time, and I don't think I learned a lot, but I wouldn't recommend that for a long-term strategy. I've had a lot of clients that have started this way, and as soon as they started tracking their food, they're like, oh my gosh, this is why I never lost weight doing this. And I would agree, myself included. I thought I was very athletic, training all the time, and my body composition, I felt like did not reflect that. And I was just eating a lot more calories than I thought. I had a lot of paleo baked goods and sweets and things, and it was still just a lot of calories. So that's probably some of the biggest downsides. As far as how it works, so to speak, it eliminates a lot of, I'll say, common inflammatory foods, but also eliminates a lot of processed foods. So for some people, that's eliminating a lot of extra calories. So that might be why people are experiencing, weight loss with that particular approach. The pros of this type of diet, I would say, generally whole foods. It does eliminate a lot of common inflammatory or allergenic foods for people. So some people figure out like, oh, I actually don't tolerate gluten that well, or dairy isn't my friend, etc. But I would say the cons can be very high calorie, not a lot of portion control. It doesn't really teach you how to eat those sweets, even if they're paleo treats or whatever. It doesn't really teach you how to incorporate those in a balanced way because of the lack of portion control. I think for some people, it can be really tough on your relationship with food because people will often say, this is a clean food, this is not a clean food, this is good and bad. And I think that's a slippery slope when it comes to how you talk about nutrition. And it can eliminate a lot of really nutrient dense foods. For years, I thought I had a problem with dairy, and I don't think I did. I reintroduced it just fine. Now, maybe I just had a really long elimination diet, and so my body was nice and healed or whatever, or better able to tolerate dairy. I think that's probably more the case. I think that can be tough as well. If you can tolerate dairy, it's an incredibly nutrient dense and high protein option, and also usually more affordable protein option. So that's really helpful for people, especially when we are talking about how to make this stuff sustainable. If someone can tolerate dairy, use it. Don't take it out just because you think it's a bad food for you. If it doesn't make you feel good, that's one thing. Also, I would say legumes. Legumes can be a huge source of fiber, great plant protein source, and that gets taken out quite often with paleo too. Now, some people don't tolerate them as well. They'll have gastrointestinal issues and bloating and gas and all those things that, aren't pleasant, but that's not everybody. So again, I would caution people there to make sure that we're not just cutting them out for the sake of cutting them out. We're cutting them out because we want to see how we do without them and see if that's better, see if we don't notice a difference. And if you don't notice a difference, by all means, add those back in. They can be absolutely super nutrient dense foods. Who would paleo be good for? I think paleo would be good for someone who is just getting started because, again, it teaches you to include mostly nutrient dense foods and it gives you a good baseline. I would pair it with tracking just so you learn portion sizes. Even a good thing in large amounts is maybe not as good of a thing as we think it is. It can be good for someone who has high blood pressure, high cholesterol, but again, without portion control and knowing your macros and calories and things like that, I think the value is a little bit limited, but this can be really good for someone who has maybe some symptoms they just don't know why they're experiencing. Again, this is a type of elimination diet. Can be good for chronic disease. I don't think it's always the best for weight loss, but can be a good starting point. Next up is juicing. So how does it work? I think this one's pretty simple. Juicing, you drink a lot of juices. You probably drink a lot of juices for a couple days at a time, 3, 5, 4 days at a time, and then reintroduce food. People usually lose a lot of weight, feel good. I don't think this is a good sustainable path forward. Short term, yeah, maybe you kind of flood your body with nutrition, but not all of the nutrition you need. It probably doesn't come with a lot of protein, probably doesn't come with a lot of fiber unless you're adding fiber back to the juices. So in some ways it's simple because people just order a bunch of juices online, they're delivered to their house. You just do that. Very simple, doesn't take any decisions, and therefore I don't think it's very applicable to real life, unfortunately. I think it can be very expensive if we start talking about cons. It's certainly not a sustainable approach. You can't do that forever. It's low fiber, so I don't love that for our blood sugar or for our gut health necessarily. And I can't honestly think who this is good for. It's so temporary. I've heard, I might have mentioned this on a podcast before, but someone said, like, if you can do a 3-day juice cleanse, you can do anything. I think that's absolute crap. I think if you can do something 80% of the days of the year, or you can do a good habit for every day throughout the whole year, I think that's pretty incredible. Consistency is hard. We have proved that over and over again. Short bursts of extreme efforts, that's what the diet industry is built on. But if you can do something very consistently and very, moderately without stress, like that speaks to the sustainability of it. So as you can tell, probably not a huge fan of juicing. If you want to do it, fine, but have a game plan going forward of like, okay, after this like reset or the juice reset, what am I going to do? Have a plan there. That's what you really need. Next up is intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is so popular, and you'll actually be surprised. I think about 50-50 on this one. I think it can be very helpful, and that's mostly from a habit standpoint. So this is very simple for people because you're eating or you're not. Like, how much more simple can you get? So as far as how this works, there's so many different types of fasting. I don't think I could begin to cover it. It would be probably a whole series of episodes on its own. Basically, we'll define it as like windows of eating and windows of fasting. So anything beyond, I would say, call it half. So if you're fasting for 12 hours a day, eating for 12 hours a day, that's pretty typical. That's not too crazy. I wouldn't necessarily call that intermittent fasting. So if you're fasting for longer than 12 hours, like 14, 16, I would say, yeah, maybe you do intermittent fasting. I also think intermittent fasting can apply to the week. And that's what some of these protocols are. They'll have like a 2-day fast. So 5 days you eat normal, then you fast for 2 days. I think that's obviously on the extreme end of things. So there are so many different models of intermittent fasting. Some people will do multiple day fasts once a month or once a quarter or once a year. So there's just so many ways to it. But I like this approach for a couple reasons. One, because it's simple to follow. People stop eating right before bed, which I think is good. It really eliminates a lot of mindless snacking because people are hyper aware of like, am I supposed to be eating right now or am I supposed to be fasting right now? So I think that's really beneficial, and it allows your body to be in that more rest and digest state because you're not going to be eating all day. So your digestion gets to have a break, rest, repair, all those types of things. I think this improves sleep a lot too, again, because people aren't having dinner so late typically or snacking into the later hours. As far as cons, I don't love this for athletes because, again, athletes usually need to eat a decent amount. And so if I'm reducing the opportunities to get meals in, to get protein in, that is pretty tough for people to do. So very hard for athletic populations, really hard to get enough protein. Protein is so filling, hence why bodybuilders have like 5-6 meals a day. So odds are bodybuilders aren't doing intermittent fasting. I think it's also hard to build muscle with intermittent fasting. If you have a workout in the morning and you're not eating until after that workout, so you can't, or you feel like you can't have that post-workout shake, I think that's tough. Overall calories and macros are going to play a bigger role in that scenario. But still, if we're trying to optimize muscle growth, we do want to have protein and carbohydrates around our activity times. So I think that can be a negative for this type of eating. And then lastly, I think this can really contribute to some binge eating. If somebody struggles with their relationship with food, struggles with overeating, I think this not eating and fasting for long periods of time, and this is no guarantee that the person is eating well. You can eat McDonald's and do intermittent fasting, so there's no note to the quality of the diet, which is a problem. And so if we're not eating very well, we're not very not having very good balanced meals, it's going to be harder to fast. It's going to be more stressful on you. And then I think people are more likely to binge after that. So I think that can be quite a roller coaster when it comes to diet and eating. And this can be really, really tough on someone's relationship with food. Who would this be good for? I would say potentially someone with chronic disease. I would say probably mostly if someone mindlessly snacks a lot. This is not good for people that suffer with hypoglycemia, so low blood sugar. This is really, really not good for them because they probably don't feel really good going long periods without food. They'll be lightheaded, faint. I would say this would probably be good for someone who just wants a very, very simple structure. Maybe they already eat relatively well as far as the quality of their food, but they're just looking for a very simplified way to restrict calories. I don't think, and research backs this up, that it's terribly effective for weight loss in comparison to just general calorie restriction. It's usually about the same. Next is 75 Hard. This one is interesting. So it's not a diet program per se. It's a program that has a couple points. And so the rules, and you have to follow these rules every single day for 75 days. You have to follow a diet, just pick something and stick to it perfectly. No alcohol, 2 workouts. Each workout is 45 minutes and one has to be outdoors. Drink a gallon of water, read 10 pages of a nonfiction self-development book, take one progress photo every day. If you miss any task, is any one of these tasks, you start over, you're on day 1. So I don't really like this because it's not very flexible. It's not very individualized. The amount of water is completely arbitrary as far as, you could be a large human, you could be a small human, and that changes how big of a gallon of water really is for you to drink. So I don't love that part. Notice that there's no point for sleep on here. So quite often when people have done the 2 45-minute workouts per day, one has to be outside, they're walking in their neighborhood outside at like 10 o'clock at night. So I don't think that's terribly sustainable. I don't love this, to be honest. Again, I think it perpetuates that all or nothing mindset. I don't know anybody who still lives the 75 hard lifestyle, so to speak. It is a challenge. It's if you want to do something hard for 75 days, by all means do it. This is similar in some ways to the program that I teach, and I'll go over that at the very end, but I want people to move 2 times a day. If that's 45 minutes, that's great, but I don't want people to not move for that second period if they don't have 45 minutes. I think there's still benefit in 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you have time for. If you're consciously trying to create intentional movement in your day, I think that's the biggest benefit. And I don't want someone to think that they have to start over just because they didn't hit, the minutes that they were supposed to be moving. And I probably hate that most of all, that someone has to start over. That's not how this works. This whole thing is a practice. If I had started over because I missed like 5 days of CrossFit in a row, maybe I would have stopped doing CrossFit for like days, weeks, months, years on end, versus if I never felt like that, like I just kept going when I could. And now I'm, over a decade into this kind of lifestyle. And so I just don't really love anything that perpetuates that type of all or nothing, or that you have to start over. We're not starting over. We're always learning. We're always improving. So as you can tell, probably not a huge fan of this. I've heard somebody say, I don't need a 75 hard, I need a 365 medium. And I agree with that. You need to go medium level for every single day of the year, and you're probably going to do pretty well. So, because there's no scalability, no adjustments for sickness, travel, injury, life stress, life emergencies, anything like that. So I guess you could say it's simple in structure if you like to just follow a plan, but I think this can become very obsessive for some people. I think it can get them hyper-focused on body composition because you're taking that photo every day. It can capture a lot of good information. I have nothing against body composition photos, but the failure rate is high with this. People burn out. People delay the start of any of these habits because they're like, oh, I'll start 75 hard next month. And so they don't do anything the rest of that month because they know how hard and unsustainable this is going to be. So that's probably my biggest issue. Who would this be good for? I mean, it works. It could be good, but I don't think anybody maintains it. So if you like a truly short-term challenge or you just want to try something hard, this will work. This will work for that. Next up is plant-based. So plant-based is kind of the rebrand of vegan or vegetarian. I have a problem with the name, and maybe this is just like a soapbox that I need to briefly step on, but I think I'm pretty plant-based. Like I have a lot of plants on my plate. It's like half the plate most of the time, except when I'm in Texas right now. It's hard to find a vegetable in Texas, but otherwise, I think I'm pretty plant-based. I eat a lot of plants, and I'm not vegan or vegetarian per se because I do include animal products, but anyway, so plant-based, whether that's vegan, vegetarian. Vegan means absolutely no animal products. Vegetarians might include dairy, they might include eggs, fish, Depends on the type. So this quote works as far as getting healthier or weight loss because typically it eliminates some high calorie foods. It certainly eliminates the whole animal product food category. So there's a calorie deficit right there. It often means the person has to eat a lot of food. So if you are a volume eater, you like to eat a lot of things, this might be great for you because you can have a giant salad bowl and it can be very low calories and you will be eating for an hour and a half. And maybe if you want to do that, that's totally fine. The time commitment, sometimes that's tough. Not everybody has time to eat a giant salad bowl for 3 meals a day. The other pros of this is huge increase in fiber, which can be very satisfying. So it might keep you more full. Certainly requiring a lot more chewing. Often it can be lower calories because of this. Like I said, you get to eat a lot. The cons would be it removes complete protein sources. So there's a lot more food preparation involved. You have to chop and cook things. You could also miss out on some key nutrients like protein, complete proteins from animals. You got to be a little smarter about how you, I don't want to say smarter, you got to be a little bit more intentional about how you pair those proteins together to make sure that you're getting enough. You also have to be careful that you're getting enough B12. That's something that's really common to be deficient in, along with iron, zinc, omega-3s. All those nutrients that are found in more abundance in animal foods can be low if we're eating only plants. And this can also be really a high carb diet. Plants are generally made out of a lot of carbs, typically lower on the protein, sometimes some fats like nuts and seeds and avocados and wonderful things like that. But quite often we do have to be very intentional about getting enough protein. I've definitely had referrals of clients that had high hemoglobin A1C, so high blood sugars because they were plant-based and eating very minimal protein. Just like with keto and paleo, there can also be like plant-based treats that are still high sugar, highly processed treats. So we need to, again, learn the portion side of things, make sure our meals are still really balanced to make sure that this ultimately is a good fit. And I have no problems working with vegans or vegetarians at all. Like if this is how you want to eat, by all means, like we can make it work. There's usually plenty of strategies to ensure that you're still getting the nutrition that your body needs, even if we don't want to utilize animal products for our diet. I completely understand that. Who could this be good for? So I think this is actually really good. I think it's eating plant-based, I think can help a lot of medical issues. Because like I said, big increase in fiber. Americans, I'm sorry, but suck at eating fiber. Actually, most developed countries do. We're very low on fiber. So colon cancer rates are just increasing, and it's not really a mystery why. We're eating very minimal fiber to help our guts out. So I think this could be very beneficial for that. It may be hard for some athletes, again, to get enough protein, or young growing individuals. It might be hard to get enough calories or certainly enough protein. I would also be nervous sometimes. Anytime we're eliminating a food group for a younger person, I'm nervous of the mental impacts of that, what that could be sometimes. Next is one of my favorites. I never thought I would have a favorite diet, but I think this is because this is how I got started or really interested in the nutrition realm of things. And this is with the Whole30 diet. So a lot of people will hate on this because like, it's not sustainable. It's not supposed to be sustainable. It is an elimination diet. It is the 30-day elimination diet. And for me, this was so impactful because my sister, when she was in grad school for PT, I was still in college at the time, she reached out. She had just joined a CrossFit gym. She's like, hey, I'm doing this nutrition challenge and I want you to do it with me. Like any younger sister, I was like, well, maybe I'll do it. And I did it very half-assed. And it was a Whole30 challenge. So she did it. She won it. She won the challenge at her gym. She won a free month of CrossFit. And she saw big changes. And it completely changed how she ate, changed how our whole family ate, to be honest. And I was dealing with migraines that would take my vision away. And as a college softball player, that was pretty hard. I started to get these migraines in high school, and as soon as they hit, I was out for the rest of the day. I would have the aura before I actually got the migraine, but the aura was so disruptive, and then eventually I get the migraine, and then eventually I would throw up a couple times. So pretty debilitating. And I remember one time I was getting one, and my dad was trying to wait for a window at work. Luckily, he worked at my high school. And so I just crashed on his couch. He was a special ed teacher at high school. So he had the coolest room. He had like a full-on kitchen, shower, like really comfy couch. So very lucky that I could crash on my dad's couch that day in high school. And I finally found a window to run me home. And I remember I was supposed to be in gym class, and I was walking past my gym class. They were going back into the gym. And I had one of these migraines and I threw up in the dumpster, just like half jumped into the dumpster, threw up, and then jumped in the car. And my dad took me home. But they only got worse once I got to college. And I think they're looking back, it was probably an overload of a lot of things. So stress is definitely a trigger for those. But I think also the food I was eating was probably not helpful. So the stress was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. So long story short, when I did a nutrition challenge with Morgan, I did it half-assed. So I still had some dairy. I think I probably mostly cut out gluten and some other things. And I felt so much better and I never had one of those migraines again. And so that was pretty impactful. I was like, wow, maybe there's like, I didn't feel bad before. I told myself, like, I don't feel bad. I'm a college athlete. I'm doing well in school. I can focus. I can do all the things. Like, I don't feel bad. And then after completing that, I felt so much better. It was completely life-changing for me. And I was on a track to be a physician's assistant. I liked biology. I liked the medical system. I wanted to help people. And I was like, hang on, there must be something about this nutrition stuff. And that's kind of changed a lot for me, to say the least. So that's where I got my start with nutrition, and it started with the Whole30 challenge. So what is the Whole30 challenge? Essentially, it is a 30-day elimination of sugar, grains, dairy, legumes, alcohol, processed foods, processed sugar, etc. So very much like meat, vegetables, some starches, healthy fats, of course, but very, very basic foods. And there's so many resources for it now that like recipes are easy to find. So I think it is obviously, sorry, but easier to do now than maybe back then. Some of the pros of it is it really highlights food sensitivities. So for me, I never thought I had an issue with anything related to gluten, dairy, anything like that. And I obviously, my body was doing very well with eliminating some of those things. It encourages mostly whole foods. There's not really much else. There are some, quote, Whole30 compliant like sauces and processed things now, but in general, it's pretty basic foods. And for me, it really, really increased my awareness of how I was feeling, how the food that I was eating made me feel. So that was pretty life-changing. And people have done actually another story about doing that. Me and my family, I think, did it twice before my dad, who was not really interested in eating healthy, said, hey, can we do one of these again? And I almost crashed the car when he said that. I was picking him up from the airport. They were visiting me in Oregon during the summer. And he's like, hey, once we get back, can we do a Whole30 together? And I was like, what then? I was like, trying not to crash. And we did. So once we got home, we did an elimination diet. He found it really hard because he didn't like to cook. He didn't like leftovers. So he did probably more of the banana-based Whole30 challenge because he ate probably like 3 to 6 bananas a day. I'm not recommending that. Don't do that. But he felt so much better. He suffered with pretty significant asthma his entire life. He's allergic to rodents and we lived on a farm. So he's like, it's just how it is. And at that point, he had started to use his inhaler multiple times a day and it was getting quite bad. And after that Whole30 challenge, he didn't need his inhaler anymore. He didn't really have asthma issues. The unfortunate part, and this is where most people, quote, fail with the Whole30, is instead of being really disciplined with the reintroduction process, so you go through all the trouble of eliminating all of these foods. And the hard part is when you're done. Everybody thinks like, I did it. I went 30 days without this stuff. And they dive into a pile of brownies with ice cream. And the problem with that is we need to be really scientific with how we reintroduce the food. And so when you do this program, you really need to read the book. It is a really good book on how to reintroduce these foods in a way that gives you the information. This is what you really want to know which foods are affecting you how. So if I eat this food, I know now like gluten is probably the biggest issue, but I can eat a little bit of it and be okay. Now, if I am a high stress situation, a little bit of gluten, probably not very helpful. There's more of a problem. So we really need to be careful when we're reintroducing things that we do it in a systematic way. So you know how these foods affect you. So you can get the most out of that experience because you went through all of that 30 days of like effort and meal prep and all the things. So please make it worth it. And, do all your homework at the very end so because my dad came home and he's like, I decided to test gluten today. And I got pancakes from Burger King. And I'm like, there's so many things in there. Like that's going to be really hard to figure out what was the issue. So that's the tough part. But it is pretty powerful, the stories, and they're in the book if you read them as well, about how people feel better and like how their health changes. It's just honestly incredible. So that can be a great starting point. It is, and this is one of the cons of the program, is it's really restrictive. It is. That's for a purpose though, and it's not meant to be sustainable. I also want to be careful when you're going through this program of like labeling foods as good or bad. It's not necessarily good or bad. Like dairy can be very helpful for a lot of people. So please don't call that a bad food or a good food. It might just not be very helpful for your health, for your goals, for how your body tolerates it. So that's another just little asterisk I put on that program, especially because you don't know who's listening to you talk about food. They might think of you as a food authority. And if that's a younger person, I would just be very careful about how we talk about food around them. Who would this be good for? I would say anyone who just doesn't feel very good. Honestly, I think everybody could benefit from going through this. If you don't have a great relationship with food, I think this would be tough, to be honest. There's no portion control, there's no macros, so it could not be good from that lens of things. But I think it's really, really good if you kind of identify as just not a very healthy person. If you have a lot of chronic disease indicators of like high cholesterol, high blood sugar, high blood pressure, things like that, and your doctor's like, hey, you need to get your health in order, this could be a great place to start. Next, and we're almost done, I swear, I promise, is sugar-free. Sugar-free, how it works is people cut out a lot of high sugar products, and that creates a calorie deficit. Also, highly processed high sugar things can also be very inflammatory to the body, so people feel better. I don't think it's necessarily magic. I don't really love this approach because, again, it doesn't really speak to any sustainability. I like it because it forces you to read labels. It could improve your blood sugar. It could improve your cravings. It can get rid of sugar cravings. It can help you kind of identify emotional eating. If you start to realize like, oh, I'm not actually having a sugar craving, like I'm just uncomfortable or I'm stressed or I'm anxious or something like that. So be aware of those things. I would say a lot of people get hyper fixated on like, oh, this has sugar in the label and it's really like not a lot, or the food naturally contains sugar. Like someone will say like, oh my gosh, that dairy is really high sugar. I'm like, dairy does have some sugar in it. That lactose is the sugar. Yes, sometimes we add sugar to the dairy to make it sweeter for sure. But I don't think it gives people a lot of context into overall nutrition. It gets them hyper focused on just like one aspect. Some cons with this, again, the limitation of context, but also can make people kind of rigid about food. It can make them afraid of carbs or obsessed in the fact of like carbs are bad or fruit has too much carbs or things like that. I don't think this would be good. I mean, I guess it would be good because like the results would probably you're eating more nutrient dense foods. But again, there's probably other better approaches of like just tracking your food, learning about your food, what has sugar in it, what has more protein, what has more fat in it, things like that, than just getting hyper fixated on just one aspect of diets. Last on my list is carnivore. This is pretty simple. It's only animal food. That's all you eat. So it eliminates a lot of food, a lot of calories. People drop weight like crazy. This is a ketogenic diet, pretty much. It's very, very low carb. I guess if you're including dairy in that, you could get some carbohydrates that way. If your version includes honey, you can get some carbohydrates that way, but otherwise pretty restrictive. People lose a lot of weight. It's a very extreme elimination diet, essentially. Some people see relief in their short-term relief in their autoimmune conditions. Again, I think because it's such an extreme elimination diet, but again, not sustainable for me. No fiber to support gut health. Not good for some people that have a history of heart disease in their family. So wouldn't recommend for probably anybody, but I do know people that have used it as kind of a short-term reset, and that's been pretty powerful for them. So again, I never want to shame anyone for trying anything. It's been called a gateway diet to a lot of really wonderful things for a lot of people, but I can't recommend it clinically. There's aspects like it gets you to reduce a lot of processed foods, gets you to eat more protein. People feel more full if they're tired of feeling hungry. So that's how it quote kind of works, but I can't necessarily recommend this to anyone in particular. All right, I said in the beginning I had one motive. I'll be honest with you, always. Integrity is big with me. So my motive was to educate you on these different types of diets, how they work, what a nutritionist really thinks about them, the pros, the cons, and what I would recommend to you. And the program I would recommend to you is my program. Obviously, I think it's the best out there. I called it To Become a Healthier You because that's what I want you to do. And that looks different for everybody. But again, these are focused on the core habits, the core nutrition principles that get most people feeling better. And those core habits are protein and plants. If we do that, if we stop when we're almost full, if we walk for 15 minutes a day or more, if we get at least 30 minutes of intentional exercise, aka move 2 times a day, if we get at least 7 hours of sleep, drink our water, eat mindfully, life goes pretty good. Health usually goes in the right direction. So these are the core fundamentals of my program. It is a community-based program. It will cost you less than one fancy coffee every week in a month. Affordable. affordable, and effective. I am absolutely loving the community that we are creating. If you are interested, enrollment is open now. You can go to parksidenutrition.com/healthieryou to sign up. But if that is you, if that is what you are looking to do, become a healthier you, this could be the program for you. Very affordable, very simple. You also get rewarded for doing the habits. You earn points, you win prizes every month. So I'm biased, but I love this program. I love what we're creating here, and you are absolutely welcome to join it. We would love to have you a part of the team. Otherwise, thank you so much for still listening to this podcast. I know it was a long one, but I really want to set people up for success at the beginning of the year. So hopefully you learned a lot. If you did, please consider leaving this podcast a 5-star review. Follow the podcast on Spotify, giving it a like on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and consider sharing with a friend. That would help us out so much, help me grow this program so I can make more impact and help more people become a healthier version of themselves. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great one.